What's up, everybody? Slightly delayed part 3 to the answers video here. Sorry about that. This weekend was super busy, and then I spent a lot of my free time between, the last video and now building this piece of shit sitting behind me. It's a new desk, if you can't tell on my, grainy piece of shit webcam. I actually got it for Christmas, and we got it at a really good price. But you know what that means with a piece of furniture? It's a quality piece of furniture at a really good price. That means you've got to assemble it yourself. And for some reason, in the little bit of free time I had this weekend, I got a wild hair up my ass and decided I'm going to put that fucker together. You know what I mean? I got my screwdriver out and I dumped it all out on the floor and proceeded to have a full-blown fucking panic attack. I'm not mechanically inclined at all. I've been able to put shit like the computer desk I'm sitting at right now. I put together myself. So it's not like I'm incapable of doing it, but it's one of my least favorite things in the world to do. It's just tedious and on one hand that makes me feel like a kind of a piece of shit, because I feel like a man should be able to do things like that. Not only should he be able to do, like, I should be able to build anything with my hands, but I should enjoy it as well, and I just don't. I've never taken like any kind of enjoyment out of building things or fixing things or doing, ugh. And so part of me feels like a big pussy, you know what I mean? Because it took me so long and it was so hard to put this fucking thing together. On the flip side, though, part of me wonders, like, who, this company that sells this desk, like, who do they think lives in this country? Do they really think that your average American that needs a computer desk for cheap is going to be able to tackle that? Because I'm not talking, this wasn't just like, put in a screw here and attach a bracket there. This was a full-blown, like, they may as well have just put a log in a box with a little handsaw and been like, carve yourself a desk, fat boy. It was that bad. This thing was so completely disassembled. And the fucking instructions, they read like some fucking like ancient dwarven tome or something. I don't know how to put it. Like, I just opened it up and it was like, so I don't know how to feel about it, but now comes the arduous task of moving my computer shit off of this old piece of shit desk, cleaning it all up, throwing this desk away, and then moving everything onto that desk. And that's going to have to wait a couple of days because I don't even want to look at that desk right now. I'm so done with it. The fact that when I look at my screen, I can kind of see it over my shoulder. I don't even want to look at it. I don't want to say, I don't want to talk about it anymore. So let's move on. Let's get to the goddamn videos. Did you have a fucked up childhood? It's kind of a subjective question, isn't it? Like, what's fucked up to me may be, a cakewalk compared to what you went through, or vice versa. But yeah, I think that in some ways everybody has a fucked up childhood. I think that's one of the things that childhood is about. We have a tendency to look back at childhood and with rose-tinted glasses. Oh, those were the days I didn't have any, I didn't have a job. I didn't have any responsibilities. All I did was play with my Ninja Turtles all day and watch cartoons. And, you know what I mean? We tend to look at childhood as this rosy thing. But I think everybody's childhood is fucked up to a measure, and it's a good thing. Because I think part of childhood is being prepared for a fucked up world. And yeah, my fucked up childhood, I think, helped to prepare me in some perverse way for a fucked up world. My parents were divorced when I was 7 or 8 years old. I know, join the fucking club here in America. That doesn't make me a special snowflake here in America. Land of the, like, what's the latest number? Like 80% of marriages fail. Like, that's hot. That's good to know. So my parents were divorced, and it was a really ugly divorce between them personally. Lots of fighting, lots of nastiness. But luckily, I think my little sister and I were really lucky that they were always amicable when it came to the kids. They didn't use us as chess pieces in their shitty little game with one another, you know what I mean? They always did what was best for us. They didn't drag us to court and fight over us, They kind of let us choose who we wanted to be with. They tried to have us, equal amounts of time. And I think that worked out a lot better than the alternative. Growing up, I grew up in an alcoholic household, so I saw a lot of shit that seems really normal to me looking back, but when I talk to other people about it, they're kind of like, You were 5. Like, who? I saw hard drugs used when I was really young. A lot of drinking. My parents were very hardworking people, but on the weekends they would have everybody they knew over at a party, and it would go on till fucking 4 or 5 in the morning. And I was a little kid, 6, 7, 8 years old, wandering around in the midst of this, and that just continued all throughout my childhood. And looking back, I didn't feel tortured, but other people are just appalled. You know what I mean? I saw strippers, before I was old enough to want to see strippers. Just lots of drinking, lots of really drunk, idiotic adults, and me, a little kid. That's the world that I learned to move in. You know what I mean? And I think it kind of pushed me towards the comedic spin that I can put on things sometimes, because drunk people love a story. You know what I mean? Drunk people love a story, and when it's coming out of a 7 or 8 year old's mouth, it's even better. It wasn't until later in my life that the drinking in my family started to bother me, and I remember it was one of those kind of crystallizing moments. I remember one of my friends, and I know he didn't mean anything by this. He wasn't trying to hurt my feelings. We'd gone over to my mom's house to hang out for a while, and my mom was drinking, like she pretty much always was in those days. And the guy said to me after we left, we went to go get something, and he's like, "Man, like, your mom's a trip." And I was like, "Yeah, I know. Everybody loves my mom." He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I don't think I've ever seen her sober." And it just, like, crushed me. Like, I don't know. Like, it was just such a throwaway comment on his part. But for me, it was just like, God damn, he's probably right. And then I was like, I don't even really see her sober that often. And so it started to become an embarrassment for me as I got into my late teen years. But, my mom was also a person that would allow me to drink with her. And so I started drinking without fear of reprisal from my parents a lot earlier than some people did. And I don't know. I guess it's up in the air whether that was a good or a bad thing. I always knew that I never had to worry about calling and telling my mom that I was drunk somewhere, so that the chances of me doing something stupid like getting wasted and then driving a bunch of people around and dying were slim to none, because my mom always told me, if you're out and you're drunk, call me. I don't care what time of day or night it is, and I will come and get you or send a taxi or something. And I just never really had that desire to go and seek the really super illicit, sneaking around, and I don't know. It's probably a bad thing, but I don't look at it that way. Looking back, I've always spent a lot of time trying to convince people that it wasn't a bad thing, and I guess maybe it was. But yeah, my dad, when my parents were divorced, my dad weirded out. He went through what I can only really describe as a second childhood, where, especially when I got, 12, 13, 14 years old, where he was no longer really like my dad at all. He was more like a friend, like a bar buddy. Like, that's how he treated me. Like, he would tell me stories about shit that he'd done that, nobody wants to hear from their dad. But for me, it was partially kind of cool. I remember looking back on it thinking, man, God, there's people out there that would kill to have a dad like mine. That, he would tell me stories about how, like, he and a bunch of buddies went to Nevada and went to, like a whorehouse there. They have legal whorehouses in Nevada, and slept with a bunch of whores. And he'd tell me about girls that he was fucking, and not like explicit, gross detail, but like, nobody wants to know their dad's out there banging. But it was a normal part of my life. And looking back, even though back then, most of the time I thought it was pretty cool to have a dad that was like, "Hey, buddy, come here, and let me tell you about my conquests." Looking back, I'd probably rather have had a dad, you know what I mean? Because it was always really weird when I got in trouble with him to see him have to try and switch on, "I'm your dad now," you know what I mean? After spending months and months treating me like, I'm his best friend from high school. And it really progressed in such a way that my dad and I don't really have any contact anymore. And that's a loss. It's a loss for me because, I don't know. I feel like he's part of a key to understanding myself. because I see so much of myself in him and so much of him in me. We look almost exactly alike. I hear from people all the time that I look exactly like him, that I sound exactly like him. We have kind of the same sense of humor, the same storytelling style, and I don't really have access to him anymore. He retired, quite a few years ago, and he has a new family now. He travels around the country and goes wherever he wants, and he married a woman that has 2 kids, and I'm lucky if I see the guy once a year. And that's a loss, and I think it's kind of directly related to the fact that after the divorce, he was never really a dad to me at all, So yeah, my childhood's pretty fucked up. but not fucked up in the context of some other people's lives that I've heard about. So I think we all have a fucked up childhood. Let's see. Is it worth our while to try and correct the misguided views espoused by creationists in their anti-evolution videos on YouTube? Or is it just a waste of our time and effort in posting replies using the empirical evidence of the scientific community? Paul, 3 years ago, totally worth it. Paul now, not really. I've come to this really, this place, and maybe it's because I spent so much time harping on the subject of religion here on my channel, that I feel like I've said everything that I ever want to say about religion. I could literally go to my grave and never have another, discussion with a young Earth creationist. I could just never do it again, and I'd be totally fulfilled and totally fucking happy. And when you really sit back and think about it, sometimes constantly going after these people can be detrimental rather than helping. I don't think that the type of people that you're talking about, the type of people that you really want to reach, young Earth creationists, hardcore evangelicals, you're not going to be able to bludgeon them over the head with, the walking stick of reason. It just doesn't work that way. Part of what religion is turning your fucking brain off. I mean, that's what these people do. They're good at it. And there's an element, especially in Christianity, where having a lot of people attacking you and, mass downvoting your videos, thumbs down and mean comment in the comments section, and I'm going to make a video response or 12, to you, and I'm going to get, there's an aspect of Christianity where that's a good thing. You know what I mean? The more persecution that they feel they're getting, the more downtrodden they feel they are, the more looked down upon that they are, the more it reinforces their faith, because the Bible tells them that, he who follows Jesus will walk in persecution. I don't know what the fucking quote is. But, and I've always thought about religion as kind of a childlike thing. It's always been strange to me how a grown fucking adult that deals with the same problems, the same issues that I do, they have to wipe their ass after they take a shit too. They have to work a job that they don't necessarily like all the time. They got bills, they got kids, they got, friends who are assholes, they got, marriages that have broken up or good marriage. They deal with the same shit that everybody does. And yet there's this little compartment in their head where they believe fantasy, tooth fairy tale, unicorn bullshit. You know what I mean? And it used to be really interesting to me. Nowadays, it's just annoying. You know what I mean? Because I've come to this place where I genuinely believe that most religious believers, if the chips are down, they don't believe in any of this shit. They don't actually believe in the fucking talking snake. They don't actually believe in Noah's Ark. So it's an exercise in stubbornness and an exercise in tradition. And you're not going to bludgeon somebody to death, with reason, who's actively decided to shut their fucking head off. So there's a point in time where you got to disengage. And you got to pull back. It's kind of like a kid, that has an imaginary friend. It's relatively normal for kids to have imaginary friends. But at a certain point, you stop indulging them and talking about them imaginary friends. Like if they're like 9, 10, 11, 12, and they're still talking about, Mr. Bojangles, my imaginary friend. There's a certain point where you go, you know what? I don't want to talk about your imaginary friend because it's bullshit. I'm not going to indulge you in having a conversation about your imaginary friend as if it's something that has real consequence here in the real world. I've got a life to live. And that's how I feel about the vast majority of religious people, especially those that are seeking attention here on YouTube. I feel like that a lot of times when just rabidly this kind of burgeoning YouTube atheism community descends on one of their videos, that it actually reinforces their belief. And I'm just done. I'm just done talking about it, you know. I'm not saying I'll never do another religious video again, but for now, I can't think of anything more, you know, boring and rehashy than talking about fucking religion. I don't know if that even answered your question. Yes, at this point in time, I think most of the time it's a waste of your time to continue hammering away at people that have decided to be dumb. Can demonstrations, protests, revolutions ever lead to lasting positive change, or are we doomed to swap old dictators for new ones? This is one that kind of you know, chisels into that cynicism that I'm always talking about that I have. Look, I've seen what's going on in Egypt and Libya. And Libya's starting to look pretty dark, isn't it? Like all the, you know, civilians being just not that wasn't happening in Egypt, but it looks like in Libya it's a kind of a worse situation. And it's hard for me to not be affected by the groundswell of support that I've seen on the internet, you know, for Egypt and for Libya, and these people are standing up to their tyrants. But it's also hard for me to not take the cynic's view that overthrowing the tyrant is step one in like a 12-step program. You know what I mean? You know, rehashing your government on such a fundamental level is akin to a 12-step program to get off of drugs or alcohol or sex. You know what I mean? And getting rid of the tyrant, that's step one. And, you know, to see people just cheering and celebrating over here and, oh yeah, Egypt did it. You know, Egypt started it. And I think the bulk of the work is ahead of Egypt. And I just don't know. I just don't know that I actually believe that there's going to be the staying power in people and the knowledge base in the people there to really remake their government in a way that benefits them. So I guess yeah, I've got to go with the cynic's view on this. Revolution is great. It's great to see people getting fed up with their fucking government and taking to the streets and laying their bodies in front of the tank, you know, and saying, you're going to have to fucking roll over me, and be willing to be rolled over. There's something emotional about that, you know, seeing that, especially as an American, that you know, I'm a fat slob and I live in a nation of fat slobs, that I can't ever imagine doing that. So there's something very, you know, that reaches out from your human heart into the hearts of those people that just says, oh, that's great. And then there's the actual work of you know, a revolution. And that's the part that I think that most people here in America that are cheering about this haven't even stopped to think about yet. So yeah, I don't think things are going to be good for Egyptians. I don't think things are going to be good for Libyans for a very long time. But that's just me. That's just me. Tell a story in which you lied to everyone and got away with it. You know, I thought about this question for a long time. And you guys have heard, and this is something, going back and watching these videos and seeing people's reactions to these videos, this is one of those things that I didn't really know about myself until I started putting all of these types of stories into one box. Because most of the stories that I've told throughout these videos are stories that I've told multiple times. You know, I've cultivated these stories. I've learned how to trim a little bit here and, you know, take this insignificant information out to make it a compact, entertaining story. I've learned how to highlight the funny shit that happened and to leave out the, you know, the surreptitious information. So it's not like I've never told these stories before, but I've never told these stories in such a concentrated amount of time. And looking back, especially in my teen years, I spent a lot of time lying. Like, and had you asked me before I did this video, Paul, are you a liar? I would have said, no, you know, I'm not a liar. But I guess at the very least, at the very nicest, I was one, for quite some time. But as you can tell with the stories that I've told you about lying, I always get caught, or I always end up coming clean, due to my, you know, I've got a conscience that's like an 800-pound gorilla in the room. And I always have as a kid. Whenever I told a lie, it always, you know, especially if it was to somebody that I really loved and cared for, a friend or a family member, it always came back to haunt me like tenfold. And I always ended up like either getting caught or allowing myself to be caught or just fessing up about the whole thing. So I really tried to think about a lie that I told that I really got away with. And I could not think of a single one. Not a big lie. Not something where I lied to everybody. For example, here's another lie that I told, a weird fucking lie. There was a point in time in my life where, and I was never like a person that would lie about all kinds of minute little things. I was I guess the type of liar that was fond of the big lie, the big robust lie. And as I got older, 16, 17, 18 years old, I had this group of friends. My dad lovingly dubbed them the loser crew. These were guys that I'd known since grade school, and we were all nerds. You know what I mean? We played Magic the Gathering together, and we played video games, and they would come over, and none of us had any chance of getting laid. But then I had this other group of friends in high school, from drama, and I know a lot of people, the drama club in your high school was a bunch of dorks, but for some reason, we were really well received in our high school. Drama people were cool. And so I had this group of friends that I would go and drink with and party with. And then I had this little core group of nerdy friends. And as time went on, this one of my core group of nerdy friends, I've talked about him earlier, I think, his name's Waylon, started dating a girl. And it looked like he was going to get laid. And I had always just assumed, because I was a dork, but I was probably the coolest of the dorks. I'd always just assumed that, fate would deign me, would anoint me the one to lose my V card first. I'd always just assumed. I didn't really work towards it all that much. I always just, assumed that a piece of ass would fall out of the sky one day and I'd get to come brag to everybody about it. But now Waylon's dating this girl, and it's looking like he's going to get laid. And so I made up this ridiculous lie with the help of a friend of mine, a female friend of mine from drama, who at some point in time had said, and I don't know why, we were spending a lot of time together, and people were starting to go, "Ooh, look at mom," you know what I mean, how high school is. And she said, we should just tell everybody we're dating and see how they all react. And I was like, nah. But then I got it in my mind a couple of days later, Waylon's about to get laid. I cannot let him get laid first. So I went to her and I was like, remember what you're saying about how we should tell everybody we were dating? And she's like, yeah. It's like, let's do it. So we started to tell everybody we were dating, when in actuality we really weren't interested. I mean, I would have, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit here and lie and tell you I wouldn't have broken her off a piece. But, it just wasn't... It was more a thing of convenience, because now I could tell my friends, ooh, look, I'm dating this chick. And I made up this ridiculous story, having no idea what a first time was supposed to be like. I came up with a stupid story that I'd picked her up in my car, taken her out behind this, grocery store. There was this big parking lot, behind a grocery store, and parked under a parking lamp and fucked in the back seat of my car. And all my friends were like, oh, wow, man, tell us more detail, tell us. And so I made up all the stupid details, and I could tell Waylon was pissed, because he really thought he was going to beat me to the punch on this one. It turns out he actually did. And then, a year later, I had to come clean to all of them, because I was so sick of it coming up, because it was one of those things that just continuously came up in conversation, to the point where I was like, look, I just got to fucking tell you guys. I didn't fuck her. I didn't fuck her. We weren't even really dating. I didn't want Waylon to be the first. So there you go. I had to tell everybody. And my friends were disappointed in me. But I couldn't live with the constantly having to fucking deal with it and to tell people about it and blah. Ugh. So anyway, that's the time where I lied to everybody and got caught. Could not honestly think of a time that I lied to people and got away with it. I'm not a good liar. Let's see. Not sure if you have a child or not, but if you had or have one, would you raise your child as an atheist or encourage him or her to explore that shit themselves? Well, a little information that you as my subscribers may or may not know about me. I'm actually married to a Christian woman. I know, another facepalm moment for a lot of people. Obviously, my wife is not the type of, she's not a hardcore evangelical Christian. She's not a church-going Christian. She's the type of Christian that I've always said on my channel that I don't really care about, because her religion is a very personal thing for her. She doesn't seek to, she doesn't support legislating her Christianity. She doesn't want to see, intelligent design taught in science class as an alternative to evolution. She doesn't want to see abortion outlawed. So really, she's the type of Christian that in my personal life and here on YouTube, I don't give two shits about. Like, it's a personal thing for her. And, there has to be a mutual respect between people. Now, a lot of people would ask, why would you ever date, much less marry a Christian? You need to understand the part of California that I'm from, and I know, California in a lot of people's minds who have never visited here, is this long strip of sunny beaches. You know what I mean? From LA to San Francisco, it's nothing but beaches and atheists. You know what I mean? I live in a part of California that is like California's Republican stronghold. The chances of me ever meeting an atheist girl are slim to none. I've literally in my personal life maybe had face-to-face contact with maybe 5 atheists my entire life. The chances of me meeting a girl that shared my exact, viewpoint on the origins of the universe or the existence of a deity, and then being compatible enough with that girl, it's slim to none. If that was a prerequisite, I would be the loneliest motherfucker on the planet. It just wouldn't happen, given the area that I live in. So we've talked about the prospect of having children, and we talked about it long before we ever got married, because it's really, there aren't a whole lot of times where me being an atheist and her being a Christian causes a whole lot of headbutting conflict in our lives. I know it's hard for people to understand that, but it really doesn't ever come up. But hammering out the thing with the kids, that's something that we had to do, and it's one of the things I'm most proud of about our relationship, because I really like the way that we had decided to go about this. So the most important thing about both of us is not to push either view on the child. I would much rather raise a child that's a critical thinker, that's capable of looking at things and making his or her own mind up, than to hammer atheism into a child's head. Because I've said this before, I think I talked about this at great length in my Stick Ham and Beer Room. Atheism is meaningless to me. It's not something that informs my personality. It's not something that informs my life. It's a response to a positive theistic claim. That's it. It's not like this, I don't have a proud atheist t-shirt. I don't have the atheist flag hanging in my room. You know what I mean? I don't rabidly listen. The fact that there's like an atheist rapper, I can't remember what that guy's name is. Graydon Square. Like, that type of shit, to me, because it just so doesn't inform anything about my fucking life, I've always thought that was silly. You know what I mean? It's just nothing to me. Atheism is not this big shining thing in my life. It's a response to a positive theistic claim. It's a religious believer going, hey, there's a great googly moogly up there, and me going, nah, I don't believe that. Sorry. That's it. That's all it is to me. Yeah. Rather than have a child where you hammer atheism into their head and hammer, this anti-theistic worldview into their head, I would rather raise a child that had been exposed to both things. And so, with my wife and I, when it comes to the child, it's all about mutual respect. When there's no plans of taking the child to church. There's no plans of even really spending time talking to the child when it's very young and couldn't possibly understand the implications of there being a God or a religion. But when the questions come, we've decided to make it completely known that, mom and dad don't agree on this. Mom is a religious person. Mom believes this. Dad doesn't believe that, and that's okay. It's okay to not agree with one another. And the most important thing is that you, as you grow up and start thinking about these things, you make your own mind up. So I guess the follow-up question to that would be, well, what if your kid turns out to be a Christian? So what? So what if? Pretty much everybody I know is a Christian. I just told you that I've face-to-face met maybe 4 or 5 atheists in my life. If being not being a Christian was a prerequisite to being a member of my family, I would be alone. So, yeah, that's how we worked it out, and I kind of like it. the idea of raising a child that's a critical thinker and raising a child that is equipped to make their own decisions about things like that, rather than trying to mold them into a little me. Let's see. Do you feel that racial generalizations actually exist to a considerable level? I don't think that they're as racial as people make them out. I think that it's more of an economic generalization. There was a play that I saw once, and I can't remember the name of it for the life of me. But one of the lines in the play that really stuck with me was, poor people have poor ways. Poor folks have poor ways. I think a lot of the generalizations that people make about races are more about poverty. In the area that I live in, I know a lot of ghetto white people and a lot of ghetto Hispanic people, and not so many, but I've been exposed to quite a few ghetto African American people. And the one thing that all of those people had in common was that they were dirt fucking poor. So no, I don't. I think that the generalizations that you hear people make have some truth to them, but I don't think it's a racial truth. I think it's an economic truth. In your interview with The Amazing Atheist, you talked about films and plays. Do you think video games are a good medium for storytelling? This is a good question. In one of TJ's answer videos he did a week or so ago, he got a very similar question. It might have been this very same question. And he doesn't think so. He doesn't think that video games are a good storytelling medium. And I don't plan on getting all fanboy and foaming at the mouth, but I couldn't disagree more with that. The video games as a storytelling medium are the sole reason why I'm a 30-year-old man who still plays video games. I don't play video games like the games I used to play when I was a kid. As nostalgic as I am for Super Mario Brothers and Sonic the Hedgehog and all those types of games, when I try and play them now, it's an endless source of frustration for me. There's a really popular little platformer game that's out right now that everybody's like, oh, you've got to play this game. It's brilliant. The control is perfect. It's called Super Meat Boy. I played that game literally for 15 seconds and threw the controller down and never picked it up again. I will never play that game again. I don't have the time or the inclination to play games that require all those fine motor skills. And one of the biggest casualties of that for me was StarCraft 2. I was so stoked for StarCraft 2 because I used to play so much StarCraft when I was, younger. And the fact that it had been so many years since the original StarCraft, and we're finally seeing a sequel, and I'm watching these videos of it, and it looks amazing. And I know, nerdy, I actually waited in line at a local GameStop and with a couple of my friends and bought it on midnight, the night that it came out. And I had to work the next day. I was up till like 4 a.m. getting it installed and playing my first few games. But as time went on, and StarCraft 1 had a pretty awesome story. The story in StarCraft 2 didn't really do much for me. And all I was left was the mechanically based competitive multiplayer where you've got to practice and drill yourself and really, work on your mouse movement and work on your hand speed and work on your actions per minute. And I just couldn't do it anymore. And so, StarCraft 2, this game that I was just so stoked for, collects dust on my hard drive now, And it's kind of a sad thing, but I just don't play video games like that anymore. What's kept me a video gamer is this kind of slow but steady increase in the quality of storytelling in video games. A lot of games that I've mentioned already had that. Red Dead Redemption had a fucking fantastic story. Just an absolutely fantastic story. And the ending to that game is the subject of a lot of people hated it, a lot of people loved it. I was one of the ones that loved it. I thought it wrapped up the game absolutely perfectly. The fact that the game, spoiler alert, mute this for 10 seconds if you haven't played the game. The fact that the game didn't end when you thought it would end. You know what I mean? You accomplish the goal that you've been striving for, and you're totally expecting the game to end, and you'd be totally happy, but then you've got this whole other, twist on it. It was great. And the story in that game was super involving, and you really cared, or at least I really cared, about the characters in that game at the end of it. And just like I do when I'm reading a book. One of the things that TJ said that he thinks makes video games not viable as a storytelling medium was the fact that you control one of the characters. You can't do that in a book, right? You can't do that in a movie. You don't get to take control. And I guess I can kind of see his point there, although I think taking control actually pulls me into it even further than a book can. You know, and I'm a rabid reader. Okay, I read all the time. I'm constantly reading one novel or another, and I get really drawn into a good story. And there's something so connective about playing through a good story where you control, and games that give you really great choices like Mass Effect. I've talked about Mass Effect earlier, so I won't rehash it here, but the ability to make those choices and have it affect how the story comes out just makes you care about the story all the more. Makes you care about the characters. So I think that video games are a great storytelling medium, and I'm really happy that they are, because I'd probably not be playing video games at all anymore if they weren't. I'm curious, since you talked about your nightmares, ever had a nightmare with some other kind of supernatural being? This is referring, of course, to my zombie nightmare. I think it was a logical nightmare or something that I talked about. Like I said in that video, I typically don't remember my dreams, but there is one nightmare that I had as a pretty young kid that has always stuck out at me as the scariest fucking shit ever. And I would love to like see somebody take this and make a movie out of it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't even call bullshit or expect any compensation. It's just that, to me, it's that scary. When I was a kid, I used to not be able to fall asleep without the radio on. I used to have this old 70s style, you know, hi-fi radio system that my mom stuck in my room when I was a baby, because it would help me fall asleep, the sound. And growing up, 7, 8, 9 years old, I still needed that. I've only recently, relatively recently, within the last 10 years, gotten to the point where I can sleep in complete silence. I've always just preferred the noise. And when I was a kid, I'd always have the radio on, no matter what, when I went to sleep. And I had this dream one night that really, I think, changed the course of my life. I think that more than anything, this dream made me a fan of the horror genre of movies and books. I had this dream that was kind of an out-of-body experience, that I was floating above myself as I slept in my room, that I was outside of my own body, hovering over my body as I slept in my room. And I was getting this top-down view of me laying underneath the covers, sleeping. And I could see all of my room. I was up high enough, and apparently it was, like a video game where there's no ceiling. I was up high enough where I could see everything in my room. I could see the radio, I could see my little desk, my bed, and I could see my closet. And I'm sitting there, and I'm watching myself, and the music is playing out of my radio, and I could hear it in my dream. And then a commercial would come on. I'd have it on some terrestrial radio station, and a commercial would come on for a local tire joint or something. And as soon as that music stopped and a commercial started, my closet door would start to open. And at first it was really slow. Would just open a little bit. And my focus, as I'm floating above myself, if you're following me here, would be instantly drawn to that crack. And I was like, oh, fuck, what is that? And then the commercials would be over and another song would start up, and, the closet would close. As soon as the music started, it would go and close. This went on, and every time the music would stop and a commercial would come on, the closet would open a little wider and a little wider and then a little wider, and it would always close as soon as the music started again. And as time went on, the closet door would swing all the way open, and I started to see this thing reaching out of the closet. Just a hand, but like a really malformed, slimy, knobby, long fingernailed hand come out and kind of grab around the closet. And then the music would come on and it would pull its hand back in and door would close. And as time went on, I started to see more and more of this thing. It started to get braver. Every time a commercial would come on and that music would stop and it would shamble out, you know what I mean? And I was above it, so I couldn't really see what it was like, but it's stringy hair and big, just a slimy, just a filthy, disgusting demon beast. You know what I mean? Just like every kid's worst nightmare. The thing that every kid would just die of fright if they saw it coming out of their closet at them. You know, the thing that we all feared was in our closet when we were little. And this thing would shamble out of my closet, you know, and then the music would start, and it would go and get back in the closet, and the door would close. And every time a commercial would come on, this thing would get closer to me and closer to me, to the point where it was getting so close that I'm floating above myself, and I'm yelling, and my voice isn't making any noise, but I'm trying desperately to scream, "Wake up, wake up, wake up!" And this thing at one point, and I remember this was really the worst moment of the dream for me. This thing is hunched over my body, you know, and I'm above screaming, "Wake up!" And at some point it turns its head and like looks at me and like flashes me this look and goes back to get me, and then a commercial starts. And it goes, "Rah!" It makes this god-awful noise and slams itself back into the closet. This dream went on like that all night. And I didn't wake up. You know, the dream came to fruition. I had to get up for fucking school, you know, right at the point where it's like slavering on my body and I'm watching it. It was the worst dream I've ever had. And I remember after having that dream, instead of being like, and I'm not going to lie to you, I was scared for a long time in my room after that dream. But instead of, ultimately, months down the road, it made me interested in that, because there was something about that feeling that I got in the dream. And I'm the kind of horror fan that genuinely gets scared when I watch movies. You know what I mean? Or when I'm playing a scary video game. There are horror fans that are like, oh, somebody's getting their head sawed off, and there's something in the closet, or there's something, you know, in the sewer grate, or they all float down here, Georgie, and you float too! You know? Any It fans in the house? Fantastic book, pretty decent movie. Anyway, I'm the complete opposite. I'm not this aloof, like, oh, I love slasher flicks, man. I love this, you know. I love it when their guts pour out. I'm the guy that's like on the couch, like, you know, closing his eyes, but I get really into it, you know. And when I play a scary video game, I scream, you know what I mean? Like, I can't play them late at night because, like, I'll wake the whole house because I can't control myself. But I think that dream, more than anything, really set me on the path of being a person that really loves to be scared. I love being scared by dreams. I love being scared by movies. I love being scared by books. I love being scared by video games. And so that's the only other real, you know, monster dream I've ever had that really sticks in my mind. Let's see. I assume you voted for Obama. Are you satisfied with his performance so far? I believe I know, but who knows? I believe not, but who knows? And if not, what's your main critique? I'm actually going to use this video, or this question, sorry, to springboard into something that I've really been thinking about lately. Yes, I did vote for Obama. And I guess I'll start this off by saying that the vote that I cast for Barack Obama in the last major national election here in the United States is the last vote that I will ever cast in a major national election. I've decided that I am no longer ever going to vote. And immediately, a bunch of people start to boo and hiss in the audience. How dare you? And trust me, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. I was raised in the same way that you were, that voting was the most sacred thing that you could do as an American, that taking part in the process is so important and so meaningful that you just have to do it, but I can't bring myself to do it anymore, and I'm going to tell you why. This is how I've come to look at voting. I actually came up with this analogy the other day while I was thinking about this, and I think it pretty much sums up how I feel. Voting in America is like going to a used car dealership. Okay, let's say you go to this used car lot, and for once, the car salesman is completely honest with you. You say, oh, how about that car over there? And he goes, that car has a blown transmission, a cracked head gasket, the engine seized up long ago for want of oil, all the hoses are rotted, all of the rims are bent because somebody drove it on, 4 flat tires, it's got a broken rear axle, pretty much everything major that could be wrong with the car. And you say, I'll take it. and you have it delivered to your house, and you park it off to the side of your driveway. And every 2 years, you grab the key to that car, and you go and sit in it, and put the key in the ignition, and turn that key expecting that car to start. That's what voting is like in this country. That's exactly how I feel about voting. Here in America, we have this illusion of choice. We're given this illusion that when we go to the ballot box, we're voting for this politician or this politician, and they're just at odds. And it's this huge deal because they're these diametrically opposed political parties. And the world is going to be such a different place because of which direction our votes go. And in actuality, nothing could be further from the truth. These parties have the same goals. These parties look out for the same people. And to give you a hint, it's not you and me. I was reading an article on Salon.com the other day, to give credit where it's due. I can't remember what the article was called. I think it was something like Why America Will Get Much Worse Before It Gets Worse. It was some real rosy title like that. And the author of this article says that, when people talk about class in this country, the differences between classes in this country, they tend to think of upper class, middle class, and lower class. And he contends, and I tend to agree with him, that those classes don't exist anymore in this country. But they've been replaced by 3 new classes. The classes are the business class, the political class, and the everybody else class. And interestingly enough, and to their great glee, the political class and the business class have the same goals. They're a symbiotic organism that exists only to feed themselves and to accumulate more and more and more and more. That's what they're about. And they work in this great, beautiful biological symbiosis to allow each other to do that at the expense of the everybody else class. And once you realize that, once you come to that realization, how do you possibly go and vote anymore? Once you realize that Democrat and Republican are 2 meaningless terms, once you realize that, for me, the reason I voted for Barack Obama was because, as cynical as I am, I allowed that feeling of hope to get to me. There's always been a little spot, on my heart, as hard and dried up as it is. There's always been a little spot on my heart that aches for the human condition and that wants so desperately for things to be right in the world and for people to be happy and for children to skip around with red balloons and for things to be good, for people to be taken care of, for old people to not be this forgotten, segment of society, equality, all of these nice rosy things. There's this little spot on my heart that aches for those things. And I guess it must have been the dichotomy, the immediate dichotomy between Barack Obama and George W. Bush, who I suffered 8 years through with everybody else in America. The fact that he wasn't, a mush-mouthed mongoloid fucking retard, I think instantly got me in his corner. The fact that he had this way of speaking, this way of conveying this message of hope. And I knew, trust me, most of me knew that it was horseshit. Most of me knew that he was just a politician, and like every other politician, your first order of office when you take high office is to break 99% of your campaign promises. But I allowed that to creep in, and I voted for him, and I wanted to see him win, and I was happy when he won. But that happiness didn't last long. It didn't take long for my fears to be confirmed that Obama was largely going to just continue the policies of his predecessors and in a lot of ways expand upon those policies. So, that's my biggest critique of Obama, is that he isn't, and I don't think ever had any intention of doing what needs to be done in this country. And let's talk about what needs to be done in this country. Let's go back to that jalopy that I purchased. That jalopy, that fucked up car that I bought, that for some reason every 2 years I take that key out there and I say, this time it's going to be different. I know last time I sat down in it and it didn't fire up, but this time 2 years later, it's going to be different. What's going to happen for that car to actually start? Okay, this is a car that is fucked up beyond belief. This is not something I could go down to the auto parts store and buy a hose and swap it out, or buy a new battery and trade in my old one and it's going to fire right up. This is a car that needs to be gutted. And I think a lot of people that are politically active in this country look at it like it's a car that needs a hose replacement, or needs, a new spark plug, or needs its air filter changed. They hyper-focus on one aspect of things, thinking that if we can just change this, that the car's going to fire up. And I've come to see America as a car that's so far from firing up that it needs to be gutted. You're going to have to pull the engine out. You're going to have to completely swap out the transmission. You're going to have to change every hose, rewire all of the electrical system. Brand new axle, brand new rims, brand new tires. You're going to have to overhaul this car. The car has to be completely gutted. That's how I feel about the American political system. I feel it's so far beyond a one or two thing fix. I feel like it needs to be gutted. And that lends itself to the hopeless and even worse, helpless feeling that I have as an American. So I don't know how to do that. Just like I wouldn't know how to overhaul a fucking car. I'd have no idea how to gut a vehicle, and put a new fucking engine in. I wouldn't even know where to begin. I don't have that aptitude. I also don't have the political aptitude to know how to gut a political system and fill it back up with parts that benefit the vast majority of people. I don't know how it's done. And it contributes to this hopelessness and this helplessness. And that was my biggest disappointment with Obama, is that he somehow, sparked a little bit of hope in me and did what I expected him to do. He pissed all over it. Anyway, it looks like this is going to be, I'm pretty close to the end, but I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. So part 4 in a couple of days. Thanks for watching. Till next time. I'll try my best to make it an actual couple of days this time. It's a depressing note to end a video on, wasn't it? My hopelessness. Oh well. Peace, everybody.